Well, good day. I want to welcome you to our webinar today. This is our beginning of our fall session of webinars, so thank you for joining us. My name is Brenda Mowbray from Accurus. Our webinar today is Quality Management for Manufacturers. Today's presenter is Ralph Kubek, a director of eWorkplace apps, an ISV that has worked with Acumatica to create a QMS solution. Please hold your questions to the end, and I'll turn it over to Ralph.
Thank you, Brenda. So the agenda today is to really talk through a few introductions, who we are, QMS, quality management, what it means to distributors, what it means to manufacturers, what is kind of beyond the testing of products, and then show you a little bit about the product in action. And, just as by way of introduction, who are we? We're an entity called eWorkplace Apps. We created a relationship with Acumatica about 4 years ago. They were looking for an entity that had some experience in the area of quality that could work with their developers to extend the core functionality of their product to handle the quality areas that we will talk about. And we have done that successfully. There's over 75 sites using the product within the Acumatica environment. Most importantly, you need to know is that it's developed within Acumatica, within its own database, following all their standards. I sometimes challenge people at the end of these sessions to see what we wrote and designed versus what we designed and Acumatica wrote. And you can see we have had some success with Acumatica being a part of the President's Club as well as ISV of the year last year. Again, the real focus is QMS, right? And why QMS? Becoming more and more important in all industries now. There's a need to streamline and be systematized as it relates to internal quality needs. It really needs to be integrated into all the facets of your business. We talk about quarantining things. We talk about gating things. Long are the days where you're using an ERP system, something comes in, someone has a checklist, walks out in the factory, takes a piece of paper, throws it over into the QC lab, and they begin to do work. And lo and behold, maybe the product moves, something happens to the product before QC signs off on it. So this is an idea of integrating quality into the actual ERP transaction base. We have to meet customer requirements, and obviously there's a lot of industry requirements that are out there. The internal needs, we really have a number of pillars on our system. I'm not going to read through these slides, but we really have pillars. The first one is that we want to make certain there's the capability of testing items, when they're received, when they are made, when they're shipped. Do they meet the requirements? While that happens, we need to quarantine those items, right? Before QC checks them, we want to make certain they're not received or they're not shipped or they're not used. From a manufacturing aspect, if we're going through multiple steps of a manufacturing process, we want to make certain that before we start assembling an item, someone is checked to make certain it was made correctly. We also want to have non-conformance, corrective action. Should something fail, we want to make certain it's caught, and then we want a process to document in a workflow fashion what's going to be done to make certain it doesn't happen again. We want to have checklists. You have standard operating procedures that people sign off on, and we want to embed those in Acumatica. So if you're a CNC entity and there's a checklist before someone starts tooling a machine, was the machine clean? Was the correct program loaded into CNC machine? Sometimes clients have checklists that people sign off on. Again, that should be integrated into the ERP system. And then we need to rate vendors and see how well we're doing. Clearly, the focus of what we're trying to do with Acumatica is to make certain it's integrated, everything's automated. There's triggers, there's alerts, there's dashboards, all within Acumatica to have that work off. It simplifies. There's one version of the truth, and we eliminate third-party products, right? Third spreadsheets, whatever might be outside. There's customer requirements. Some customers require C of A's, certificates of analysis, other documentation. In some cases, they want some detailed information with regards to the testing that we're doing. And also we want to gain control over customer initiated quality issues, right? There's an issue. We want a non-conformance corrective action process to help control those. There's then regulatory things. Some industries have recall and traceability. Some clients need digital results. Some clients, again, need the whole aspect of non-conformance and corrective action. And then there's industry specifics, right? There's manufacturing, life sciences, many that need to meet those ISO and other standards that are out there. And is the quality management tool within Acumatica the silver bullet to do that? The answer is no, but it combined with all the features and functionality that exists within Acumatica in terms of audit trails in history, all put a entity in a position to be able to meet those compliance issues. The outcome of quality is we want to make certain that the product meets specifications. We want to make certain we've documented the standard operating procedures. And again, when something fails, we want to document what happened and what we're going to do to correct that. There's a number of things in the Acumatica Quality Management Suite: testing, checklist, non-conformance, corrective action. We support ALQ, acceptable quality limits, and sampling. We deal with vendor performance. We also allow you to begin to do testing of equipment, etc. And there happens to be two versions of it. One of them works with the manufacturing edition. Another one works with the distribution edition. What does this mean to distributors? Distributors sometimes don't necessarily think the same way for quality. However, in distribution, just like if you're a manufacturer, there's a need when we receive products to make certain we test them, make certain they get put into inventory only after they're certified to be correct. You might be doing kit assembly within Acumatica. So we need to test things when they're manufactured, and they're being manufactured, right, just using a kit assembly. We might have customers that require us to sign off on certain things when we do shipping, ad hoc testing. Maybe there's items in your warehouse. Maybe you're we're dealing with food or drugs where there's stability testing, and every 6 months or every 3 months, you might need to make certain an item still meeting specifications. Inventory transfers, you might have multiple warehouses and you want to make certain that damage doesn't occur between those particular warehouses. I'll step through this when we actually go in the product, so I'm going to click pretty fast through this, but there's a process to go through, right? We're receiving something. If we're in the food industry, was the truck clean? Standard operating procedures. Then when we receive it into inventory, we want to make certain that it meets those specifications. If we're doing kit assembly, right? We have a kit, we manufacture it, then we want to quarantine it, and we want to do some testing and documenting that's correct. From a shipping aspect, we might want to, first of all, validate that the truck was clean, or there's some suppliers, customers, I should say, in your case, that are requiring certain types of pallets, certain types of packaging material, and you might have to sign off on that, as well as maybe you do some retesting of the product right before it's shipped. So those are the areas that you're going to focus on. You're going to see a little bit as we look at the product in your distribution. What happens when we move into manufacturing? Well, we have in-process inspection. Again, we want to make certain we reduce waste and identify defects as early in the manufacturing process as possible. The other piece is when it's done, many clients want to take that item, they're going to put it into a quarantine location, and then they're going to be in a situation of wanting someone to test those before they actually put it into sellable inventory. Just an example of, again, this process of going through. We're making some powdered metals. We're in the machinery business, and we want to sign off on some checklists. Is the equipment in good shape? Has the oven been set at the correct temperature? Do we have the right program? And then we're going to create a production order, and you're going to see how we're going to trigger tests to alert quality that, yes, I'm done with step 1. And before I go to step 2, I need to be able to go ahead and do some testing of those products. And I'm skipping through these slides. Sometimes we go directly into the presentation, but for time's sake, I just find it easier to go through the presentation completely and then begin to go into the product and point out what we're doing. There's beyond testing. We've talked about the need to have non-conformance and corrective action. There's a need to have traceability reports. There's a need to make certain that we're buying the product from the right vendor. We have to evaluate a vendor. Are they sending us the right parts? Are they quality parts? Are they on time? And then again, I mentioned in some industries, there's some quality testing that needs to be done on an ad hoc basis. This is just an example of the workflow that you will see from a non-conformance aspect, right? We need to look at the details, what happened, what actions we're going to take. We then might have some additional things to do in terms of doing more investigation, document what we're going to do to correct it, what are we going to do to prevent it, and finally an audit step to make certain that what we did was actually done. And then there's the ERP part of it of we return it to vendor or we rework it or we just scrap the item out. There's then traceability reports, both backwards and forwards. The ability to do that is critical, and you'll see part of that. And then lastly, there's documentation. We've talked about certificate of analysis. We've talked about recall reports. We've talked about graphs and charts. So now that we've said the importance of quality, let's look at the product. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change screens, I hope. And I'm going to look at a screen and hopefully someone will confirm that they can now see a screen that says quality management up at the top and my cursor moving around.
That's correct, Ralph. We can see that.
Now, I'm going to go through the various tools of quality because this is how it relates to certification and validation purposes. And I'm first of all going to go into purchase orders because in many cases, the first thing that is involved in a quality system is the need for someone to validate that, can I buy this part from this vendor? And I'm going to go in and I'm going to indicate that for demo purposes, I have a simple item to use. I call it cert item. And as soon as I key off that cert item, we begin to get a notification for Acumatica that says, I can't buy this from this person. So this is the warning that says, well, we can't do something. What have we done? If we go into the quality preferences area, what Acumatica has added is the fact that now if someone does not have one of those certificates, what are we going to do when we write a purchase order? Are we going to warn the person that they can't write it? Are we going to prevent the person from writing it? Or potentially we put it on hold and then we use the core Acumatica functionality of alerts and triggers to alert someone that Ralph just tried to write a purchase order to someone who we shouldn't be buying that item from, and they need to react to that. What's a certificate? You will design these or you will create these, but let's just say in your electrical industry and something needs a UL certification. You'll define the information that you need for a particular item or a group of items, certificate numbers, dates, etc. Then we can indicate that by an inventory item, we could indicate that for a particular inventory item, what specifications does this need to meet? So I'm going to go into the system and I'm going to go into the certification process. There's not one, but I'm going to say, you know what, this is a new item we just entered into inventory, and this is needs that UL certification, and it's mandatory. So now we know that only people with this certification could handle that. What do we do at the vendor level? At the vendor level, we then have the capability to go in and indicate in a vendor, what are they certified to provide to us? And key here is what you're going to see is we're keeping track of all the certifications that they have, as well as the dates. So when I went into that transaction, I could get warning for two reasons. Number one, I don't have a certificate. Number two, my certificate's no longer valid. So what's the first thing of helping an entity ensure quality products? We're buying it from a vendor that we could properly buy from and supplies us good products. The second thing, if we go into distribution, and this time I'm just going to go into PO receipts, and I'm going to do a PO receipt for an item, and I'm going to just pick any old vendor. And I'm going to indicate that I'm not here to show all the nice things that Acumatica does in terms of three-way match and all of those. I just want to buy one of these shells. And I'm going to buy one of these, and it's a serialized, so I need to indicate the serial number. And I'm going to try to release this. Everyone knows in releasing this, this means that we want to get it into Acumatica. I mentioned another pillar, along with making certain we're buying this from the right vendor, is we followed standard operating procedures. We call those checklists. So what's a checklist? A checklist is saying, you know what, before we unload this truck, and let's pretend we're in the frozen food business. And what we really want to do is alert quality, or maybe the person on the receiving dock needs to go out and they want to document for us before we unload the truck that the truck was clean, and we need to record the temperature of the truck, because if the truck was too hot, too cold, we don't even want to unload the truck. We just want to turn the truck backwards. So these checklists are the standard operating procedures. And you could do this while we're receiving if you want to do it. It's the same type of functionality that when we start that work order, we might want to have someone sign off that we've done everything on that machine to get it ready. Now, once that's done, I could go ahead and do a receipt of this transaction. You first of all see that the user sees that this has to be quarantined, given to QC. It's being moved to a particular location. So now we can control whether the item could be sold, whether it could be used, whether MRP sees it, or in some cases, we might not even want it to be available yet. Again, dashboards and everything are an alerts, all the standard things in Acumatica. But to get through this, I'm just going to drill into a transaction. This is a QC order, which is kind of the hub of the system that we've created. Think of the quality person that's now doing inspections for you, maybe in a subsystem, maybe on an Excel spreadsheet, etc. What do they have? They have a piece of paper or a file that's saying it's the vendor, it's the item, it's the lot number. We support sampling. So this is saying what sampling is being used. It's based upon the setup of the item, which we'll look at in a few seconds. Also, we support ALQ, acceptable quality limits. How are we going to evaluate those? Since this is built within the Acumatica framework, people ask about documentation and taking pictures. You know, wherever, as those people know in Acumatica, wherever you see the files button, I could go ahead and link documents to that. So if I was taking a picture or something, that would be available to me. Now, in terms of testing, this is set up specific for an item, but what could we do? We could do alphanumeric testing, and I'm going to say this item is supposed to be red, and it's saying, yes, it's red. I'm going to fail these. There's some other numeric tests that I'm going to do, and I'm purposely going to fail those two tests. And then the last type of test we have is true false. So I've went through, someone in quality has indicated what does the user need to test, what are the viable results. The system is telling us what those viable results are. And now someone could evaluate those results and say, based upon these results, based upon the sampling size, based upon the ALQ, acceptable quality limits, this fails. Last part of this step is that we're going to post these items. Why are we going to post these items? Because this is an inventory transaction within Acumatica. Remember, we gave it to quality. Quality was putting it someplace. And now in my case, since I rejected these, I need to move it to MRB to do something with it. So you can see the tight control that Acumatica now has embedded in it, embedding quality, the process, the quarantine, all into the receiving process. One of the last pillars of quality, as you can see, I have something called NC, a non-conformance transaction, because in many cases, people want to document what went wrong and find out why it went wrong. And again, dashboards and everything exist for this, but I'm going to just refresh. I'm going to drill into this transaction, and I can now look at it. And this is a workflow, right? This is saying this item, it failed. Why did it fail? Where did it come from? All the routing and things is just part of the setup. And now I can begin to indicate what happened or what I think happened to this item. This is a workflow. So now I would go to root cause analysis. Again, now you could begin to get details. You can get analytics on why things failed, but oh, wait a minute, it's all gray. Why is it all gray? We made this a workflow so that someone has to sign off on this, right? That I've actually finished this first step. And you'll see it's new now. Now it's going to indicate that it's process complete. Now I could go to root cause analysis. And now if I'm that quality person, I could begin to say, you know what, the SOP was a problem. And now I could write more information with regards to what that SOP is. All throughout this process, like in all Acumatica, you're getting a complete history for validation purposes, who did what when. The last right turn I'll make as it relates to quality and workflows is there is now within Acumatica a corrective and preventive action workflow. This workflow is designed, these could be dealt with separately, but we just received an item, it failed, and it failed for some significant reasons. Now you could document why in more detail why it happened. You might want to document what we need to do to correct it, what we need to do to prevent it in the future, and finally document the audit steps. So you could see how this is a cradle to grave solution now in terms of bringing things from the beginning to end. I'm going to skip to being a manufacturer for a second. And we talked about quality control in relation to in-process inspection, etc. So now if you turn on quality control for Acumatica in the manufacturing suite, when we begin to look at the bill of materials, what might happen? It might be you have a process to go through to cut and shape something. And what you want to do is you want to do some tests before you assemble it, because you don't want to assemble bad parts. So what we're going to do with that gating that I mentioned before is we're going to prevent someone from beginning to assemble this before quality is actually going to go ahead and begin to shape it. So I'm going to quickly go into a production order. And I'm going to go ahead and indicate that I want to make one of these exhausts. And I'm just going to make one. I'm going to save this. And people who use Acumatica probably will click differently or quicker than I would, but I'm going to release this. Now I'm going to do this move command. I'm done with shaping that. So I'm going to go into Acumatica and I'm going to say I'm going to release it. It's saying no, we can't. What we have done is we've created an alert to the quality people. Now, if this person who's the machinist could also do this particular transaction, I would actually be able to see that. But in some cases in the real world, there's a quality management person sitting at a desk. They could get all the standard Acumatica alerts. That's not where I wanted to click. I want to click on my dashboard. And I'm sitting here and suddenly, as you know, dashboards change colors and they look differently as we're going through this process. And suddenly I just got a pop-up saying someone is finished with that shaping process. I know the work order number. I know who did the work. I know the lot number. And in this case, I just need to do some measurements. And I'm going to measure this and say, yep, measurement's good. I'm going to evaluate it. It says it's passed. Again, these could be alphanumeric, Boolean, type results, and now I'm going to post and approve it. Now a flag could be sent back to using standard Acumatica. I could send an alert, I could send a piece of paper, whatever, back to the person who's manufacturing this item. And now what they would see, if I look at production details, they're going to see the fact that quality has done something. Quality has actually approved this item. And now that's approved, what I could do is I could now go in, and again, this could have been the QC person doing this. I can now go ahead and indicate that, yes, this item is done. I'm going to release it. Again, the gate is open, and now the person who needs to assemble this could go ahead and do it. And I'm going to skip on this work order because we're working pretty fast today, right? This is now in the next phase. I'm going to go ahead and do a move command. It's operation 20. Remember, this was a two-step operation. Now I'm going to release this. We have a setup in the system that says we're going to test items when they're finished with production. So now the production person, much like in the receiving area, knows that this needs to be inspected, has a QC order. And again, I could process that QC order, and only after that QC order is done, can I go ahead and actually push it into inventory. A little bit of setup as we wind down to the end of this. I'm going to go into an item, And when you turn on quality for manufacturing, Acumatica actually begins to display a quality control tab. I really want here to indicate all the places we do testing and quarantine, when it's shipped, when it's received, when it's produced, ad hoc for some of our clients, that's stability testing that we've talked about. When an RMA comes back, when we do warehouse transfers, when I'm doing inventory adjustments, all the different places that I could begin to test items. You can see we have generic plans, but for most customers, they have preferred vendors, secondary vendors, vendors coming off probation. You could begin to have test plans specific to a vendor or specific to a customer. The last two pieces of the pillar that we begin to see, and going back to the PowerPoint of the importance of quality, is people do have the need to go ahead and calibrate or verify machines and tools are all validatable, or we are documenting when they're done. So what we could begin to do by tool is we could begin to indicate, and you could see this one has a plan. What am I going to send someone out every week to check? When am I going to send something out every month to check? And yearly, I might have checks. So this solves the question that some people had in Acumatica. I'm using a tool. I'm having a machine. How do I know that quality has approved it and it's still meeting the specification for those particular items? So those are the various pillars that we've talked about. Hopefully you could see, going back to the PowerPoint, it has to be integrated into quality. ERP system needs to be integrated into quality. We need to have those gates so we're preventing ERP transactions from happening until quality actually performs the functions, indicates within the ERP system that the quality measures have been formed, and only then could I invoke an ERP solution, an ERP transaction, I should say. Certificates of analysis, all of the data that you might need to send to your customer to verify that, yes, we did it and it meets specification. And then I indicated that for a lot of controlled entities, there is a need to do traceability reports. So Acumatica now has the capability to indicate by inventory item and lot number. Someone has a problem in the field, we could indicate the item, the lot number. We do a backward traceability, we could find out when it was made and all the raw materials that went into it. The flip side, you just got informed from a supplier that an item was defective or an item's rusting faster than it should. You can now go in here, look at your lot number, heat number in some cases. If you're in the metals industry, you'll be able to find out where that item was used, what finished goods was it used on, when it was sold, and then eventually what customer might have bought those items. So we're at the end of time. I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint. And we've taken a quick look at the product. We've taken a quick look at the importance of quality. And lastly, clearly the whole group that Murray and Brenda have are well equipped to deal with providing some information about the product, about quality, and then on the Acumatica Marketplace and community are other sites that you could go to gather information. So we promised to get through a heavy subject of quality in about 30 minutes. I think we did it in maybe 29 and a half.
Okay, well, I will end this webinar. The recording will be posted on the Accurus website. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you
Rob.
all. Everyone have a great day. Be well and be
You
safe.
too. Thank you.